Evolutionary.org Hardcore 2.0, episode 48 coming your way. Today we're talking about Shred with Anavar and Primobolan, Para Pharma, part 2. So we did a part 1, which was 47, and that was a really good one. We talked about Anavar and Masteron. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that one, go back and look at the previous episode number 47. This time we're going to do 48, and it's going to be a part 2 version, more shredding talk. We listened to a lot of you guys out there. You guys want us to talk more about shredding.
Yep.
Not a lot of podcasts do. A lot of podcasts out there don't really touch on this stuff, don't give you the tips, these valuable tips that we give you. We're the only podcast that gives you the reality and these actual tips to actually help you. Because a lot of these podcasts out there, they're just a bunch of genetic freaks. All they know is just lift weights and stick steroids up their ass, but they don't know how to diet, they don't know how to train, they don't know how to pick the right products for you to use. So in this one, we're going to cover all that. We're going to give you the tips. We're going to tell you all about Primo. Para Pharma Primo is a fantastic product. We're talking about Para Pharma Anavar. We're going to touch on some stuff we didn't get a chance to on the last episode. We're going to tell you how to stack them. We're going to tell you what other steroids you can stack with them to shred. And we're also going to tell you more about Para Pharma from the last episode. So this is going to be a really fun one, Mobster. So let's first start with why we love Para Pharma, and I'll bring you in on this one.
Yeah, I mean, look, every time we do a Para Pharma podcast, I'm going to say the same thing, guys, so don't be too surprised. But if you're a new listener, this is for your benefit, right? So one of the things that experience of using PEDs over a number of years, in fact, coming up on a couple of decades now, in my case, and Steve's not far behind me, is that we have the experience of good, bad, and ugly, right? We've had product that we've taken from different sources that haven't worked at all. We've had amazing products. We know of labs that have lasted, metaphorically speaking, 5 minutes, less than a year, and other labs that have been around decades. So here's how this shit works. Eventually, you get to understand what makes a good lab, what makes a good PED supplier, an approved source, right? So how does that work? Number one, and we talk about this when we talk about Para Pharma. Para Pharma has been around a long ass time. I believe this year will be 14 years, Steve. In fact, they're going to need to update their site. It's going to be 14 years this year in 2024 as we record this show. That is a big deal. When labs, and I've had a local lab lasted 9 months, 10 months. Great product to begin with, Steve. Free product. Try this out, Mobster. In 9 months, 10 months later, gone. The person that had sort of hit me up, gone. Literally gone. In his case, he died. They fucked up with stuff that they would produce, and they put too much money into growth hormone. It's stupid shit. What also happens, we know of kitchen sink, and I mean literally kitchen sink. You can go on YouTube and find photographs, videos talking about these kind of places where there's polythene on the walls of the kitchen, and they are literally making a product. I could show you. There's a documentary where they are, as we say in the United Kingdom, producing steroids in a lockup, literally a garage with a microwave for the purpose of the documentary. It's horrendous. And we know of the dark stories of the days where the Mexican labs that would come and go in the raids and whatever else. To be able to last 14 years, as it will be this year for Para Pharma, is an indication that they're producing a solid product. You don't get the inconsistency. You are getting solid product day one. Now, one of the things that we like to look for, and all our approved sources now do this, Steve, not every source has this, and they should. And that is stuff like lab tests or certificates of analysis. We know, again, horror stories of product raws that have come from China with heavy metals in, the inconsistency, inert powders that have been sent to people, this kind of situation. So in order for a source like Para Pharma to make sure that their own what they're being supplied with is consistent, they take randomized samples from their product line and they send them off for testing. Now, you can do in-house testing, which is great, but that's kind of like me saying that my shoes are shiny all the time. It's other people's opinion. You need to be independently tested. That's how big industry works. Food companies work. They literally let people come in, take samples, random samples off the shelf, off the production line, take them away, and you do in-house testing, but you also go out to a lab, which you pay for. And this is what our approved sources like Para Pharma do. You can go onto their website, click on lab test, and see the results of the lab test. We've had, and I mentioned this on another show or two that we've done, a member on the forums that has at his own pocket, at his own expense, ordered products from all of our approved sources, again, including Para Pharma, and independently of his own back, using his own cash, tested products. And I think the average score, and I said this on a previous show, Steve, came in around 98, 99%, meaning that pretty much all our approved sources, again, including Para Pharma, were as legit as possible to be for a UGL. So this is the kind of stuff that we like. And then finally, and Steve and I can both say this with our hand on our heart, it would be very easy for me to sit here and bullshit the listener and say, oh yeah, it's great product. I have personally used Para Pharma products. I've actually been contacted by members of the forum. They say, oh, what company is it? Because you recommend this and you recommend that. Which ones? I can literally, I think there's 3 companies that in the last 12 months, I say, I've used this one, I've used this one, I've used that one. And I specifically can say that I've used Para Pharma products supplied to me by one of the resellers for me to do a cut. And I can say that I had, as I joked at the end of the cut log, great success, LEG style, in me using Para Pharma Cut Stack 150, their particular product. And so I can say, I've used their products. It worked exactly how it's supposed to work. It was smooth going in. I had no post-injection pain. It did include Tren, which I'm still not a fan of. So I did the whole Tren vibe. But nevertheless, the purpose of that particular stack was a 4-week cut. I'm still, and I say this on show, Steve, I might actually adjust the belt down another notch. I'm still 2 notches down, 2 screw holes down on my lever belt from the cut, and my belly hasn't gone back up. So that to me is a success. I got leaner. I was still able to do the stuff. It killed my cardio, and yet I was doubling up on the cardio. So yeah, it did. Tren exactly did what it's supposed to do. It was part of that particular product, and a great success. So yeah, how you listen to these shows, you're not always listening to someone who specifically used a product. I have used Para Pharma product. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, and I've used them as well. They've really come on strong the past couple of years and gaining popularity. And they've been on a lot of forums over the years, and they have a lot of reviews. Really, any steroid review website out there, they're usually in the top 2, top 3, top 4, top 5, whatever. In terms of amount of reviews they have, and they're really growing quite rapidly. And a lot of resellers, a lot of the top resellers are now selling their products. So that tells you that they have, number one, they're very popular, and number 2, they have a lot of interest out there from different sources who are like, well, we don't want trouble. We don't want to bring on a source and resell. We don't want to bring on a brand, and sell their products and have complaints from customers that have tested the products that it was no good, or have complaints from customers about the quality, or that it's crashing all the time, or it's post-injection pain, So they'll bring on high quality brands for a reason. And they brought on Para Pharma because it's a very popular. And the nice thing about Para Pharma is the people that use Para Pharma, in 99% of cases, they will come back in the future when they do decide to run a cycle. Some people run a cycle, they'll wait a year, they'll wait 3 months, they'll wait 5 years, they'll wait 10 years, whatever. But my point is, where do you go back to? And a lot of people, 99% of customers who've used Para Pharma, go back a second time, a third time, a fourth time. It's like Thanksgiving dinner at your grandma's house, and everybody you got the tables full of food. You got 50 people there, and you got 3 tables of food. One table is grandma's food, one table is aunt's food, one table is your uncle's food that he made. And everybody, is going to one table to get food because they tried each table, but then they decide, you know what, I like this food the best, I'm going to go to this table. You see, it's the same thing. So sources out there that are selling these products, they know. And by the way, if you want to know who is selling Para Pharma and where to get Para Pharma, you come on our website, obviously, and you check that out.
Yep.
We have a lot of people asking that in the comment sections on social media. You got to come on the forum. We can't post on social media where to get this stuff. You have to
Yeah.
come on the forum. Okay, that's
Yeah. That's not how it works, guys.
yeah, that's
That's
how it
not how it
works
works.
in
No.
real life.
YouTube will kick our asses.
So, you know, at the end of the day, for me, you know, been around the game a long time, there used to be a time where you couldn't do what Mobster said. You couldn't send your stuff off to be tested. So what would we do in that situation? We'd cross our fingers and hope it was legit. But now you can. And brands that don't have high quality products
Yeah.
and they're not
Yeah.
dosed properly will be exposed very quickly. So Para Pharma, the fact they've been around this long, they know what they're doing. Go ahead, Mobster, and we'll move on
Let
to
me
the next
finish off on this. One of the things that Steve and I have experienced back in the day, I did not have a fucking clue. In fact, didn't even have a choice, never mind a clue. I knew that I was a certain person who was very famous in the UK at that particular time that I could contact. It was fantastic for advice. In fact, I was lucky, as you know, for other shows that we've done, to have two such people that I could speak to. And they were the biggest gurus of their type in the United Kingdom at the time. And one of them was able to source material. So you knew that it came from certain countries, but brand, forget it. You got what you got. We know it's come from this country. We know it's going to be good to go. We know that the product has got a great reputation. But in terms of brand, there was no choice. I think it was literally you wanted this from Pakistani, this or Iranian, that. That's what you got. What you didn't get was a company that you could go, oh, I like this specific brand. Can you get it for me? One of the things I'm going to say here, and this especially applies to Para Pharma now, and I've said this on other shows. There's a phrase, I believe, that was quoted by Winston Churchill. I might be wrong. And actually, it's another politician. I tell a lie, Prime Minister. And the phrase was, you've never had it so good. Listeners, you've never had it so good. You've never had it so good in terms of the surfeit of information that you have, like this podcast, the ability to go on forums, especially our family of forums, and check out information and get up-to-date data and have access to certificates of analysis, both on the forums and on the websites, being able to check a source, being able to check a reseller. But literally, and this is the truth also, and especially applies to Para Pharma here, and again, like I said, 14 years coming up on right now, you've never had the quality and the accessibility to brands like Para Pharma until this point in time. Trust me, when it comes to this kind of stuff and our information and our experience and all that kind of stuff, and this, I don't think there's a guru or anybody that does this kind of podcast that can deny this, Steve. They've only got to go back 10 or 15 years to see that I'm telling the truth. And you can go back 20 or 30 years, back to when Muscle Media 2000 was talking about this stuff with the Mexican labs. You can see the history. 20 years is nothing. Steroids have been around a long time. But in terms of accessibility to solid products with great reputations like Para Pharma, you've never had it so good. Now let's talk about what shredding's about. And I'm going to touch upon, I'm going to let Steve do the average Joe, which is going to include our listeners that wants to get into shape. I'm going to talk about a little bit more on shredding for the competitive athlete. Now, the reasons why we're talking about Para Pharma Primo and Para Pharma Anavar today is specifically because, and I'm thinking again for competition athletes, a professional bodybuilder or a model or someone or any of these classes, classic bodybuilding, for example, Steve, where you need to be ripped to fuck, aka shredded, and hold on to as much muscle tissue as possible. When you're doing a shred, applies for both groups. It is perfectly normal to lose a little bit of that muscle tissue that you spent all winter long building up, bulking up, getting bigger, adding a quarter of an inch here, sticking an eighth of an inch there, putting some more clay on the muscles, as Arnold Schwarzenegger's like to say, to shape the physique into the statue, the artwork, the whatever you want to call it, that you guys want to be. Now, you get shredded. This is when we bring out the detail, the lines in the chest, not just the three heads of the delt, Steve, but the little lines at the base of the delt where they tie into the tricep and the bicep. That kind of fucked up look that the truly competitive athlete has the really crazy shredded. And there are some great examples out there that listeners can find on the internet in terms of shredded athletes. And this is not this could be baseball players, never mind bodybuilders. Now, for a competitive athlete, you're looking sometimes, Steve, 16 weeks. I've heard even up to 20 weeks. And typically that will consist of 2 or 3 phases. It will consist of a bulking phase coming off the bulking, 3-4 weeks. And then you start to tidy the diet up. You start to focus the training on bringing out details. And then finally, anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks, you're really trying to get cut down and the diet gets crazy restricted, sometimes 1,000 calories a day, cardio for hours at a time. We've all heard the stories. And this is when it's uncomfortable. And I want to really touch upon this as well, right? And this is why if you do the shred, if you use Para Pharma, this is the super important stuff. I want you to understand an element of it. I've done for myself, and I know Steve's done fasting, which is crazy long, 3-4 day fast, more, I believe, up to 4, possibly 5 day fast. In order to do the fucked up shit, and I've done just for my strength stuff, Steve, as you know, elements of my training where I've been, to coin a phrase, hanging out of my ass, real dog tired, beating myself up, training twice a day, and doing the headspace where I had to be in terms of I need to be thinking that there's no one out there training as hard as I am, putting himself through 2 sessions a day, beating himself up, so that at the end, I can super compensate. I can allow my body to repair. And on the day of the competition, I'm going to come in ready to rock and fucking roll, tear shit up, and give every other fucking competitive athlete that I'm going to go up against a new arsehole, because there's no point in them turning up. I'm going to kick ass. And so the training for me had to be that kind of headspace where I am fucking shit up. Now, for competitive athlete, and even a few of you that are going to get crazy shredded, I'm going to let you into a little secret. It ain't easy. It's hard. You're on 3,000 calories a day, and the prep coach gets you down to 1,000 calories a day because you're behind. That shit's hard. If you're used to doing 20 minutes, 40 minutes cardio a day, and now you're doing a fucking hour, an hour and a half, that shit's hard. Sometimes the diet, not always, but sometimes the diet is bland, simple. It's like you've taken all the sauces and spices and all the good shit is off the table. You're not at grandma's anymore, as Steve was referring to earlier on. This is it's not quite the lettuce leaf and whatever else, Steve, but it's real simple, straightforward, functional. It ain't there for flavor. It's there to make you as lean and as ripped as possible. So from that aspect, and this especially applies to the competitive athlete, and you can see examples out there for what you're looking for, and this is what makes it all worthwhile. The same thing applied to me when I was doing my strength competitions. I beat myself up. I want to feel fat. I want to feel like an old man that's been mugged in the street. So that on the day of the competition, I'm ready to kick ass, and then I get records, and then I'm on the podium taking my first place trophy, and it makes all the effort fucking worthwhile. The same thing applies to the competitive athlete. There are athletes out there who talks about how they will say something like, Steve, I feel dead. I'm just going through the motions. Kevin Levrone sleeping on the floor with a gun because he didn't want to sleep on the bed. He wanted to make the whole thing as hard as possible. But winning takes all that shit away. That check, that big fat $100,000 check, takes all that pain away. It makes the discomfort, the cold, the shaving, the shivering, the whatever that you've had to go through worthwhile. Some of that aspect you need to kind of learn and apply and listen to on this podcast when you are a normal Joe that wants to get into shape. Because trust me, if 5 of you and your buddies sat down together and said, we're all going to get in shape for the summer, this is how it works, Steve. Maybe 1 of you, 2 of you will be properly shredded. The rest of them will find other things to do. The girlfriend, we went out for a meal. Sorry, I fucked up the other day. I couldn't make training. Only 1 of you, it's probably 1 in 10, Steve, never mind 1 in 5, will put your foot down and press hard and get this shit done. Talk about how that can be, Steve, for the average Joe that wants to get shredded.
Yeah, getting shredded is more and more difficult in America. And it's getting more and more difficult on your side of the pond as well, Mobster. Just all the garbage that they put in the food. and all the sugar that we consume. We consume more refined sugar in one day than our ancestors. I'm talking about our ancestors thousands of years ago, or even 500 years ago, or even 200 years ago, consumed in their lifetime. Isn't that crazy? Because think about it, when you refine sugar, all right, you take the sugarcane plant, which is only found in certain parts of the world. Okay, it's not grown in Britain, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure it has to have a warm climate to even grow.
Yeah, nothing here, man.
Yeah,
Beet sugar. I think sugar beet we got. We haven't got
yeah.
any kind.
So look, at the end of the day, you take the sugar cane plant, you open it up, you got a liquidy white sweet thing inside, right? Then you take that and in a factory, you refine it into a powdery, sugary substance. And that's what they put in products. So that goes on your body and it spikes your insulin to ungodly amounts. Ungodly amounts. And when you spike insulin in your body goes into fast storage mode. You start storing fat like crazy. Okay? That's a survival mechanism that allows us to store excess fat to be used at a later date during a famine, okay, during, wars, during volcanoes, during storms, during all these things where we need to tap into that excess fat to survive. But now we don't have any of those issues, okay? Whenever there's a natural disaster, you've got, they bring food to you. You don't got to worry about it in America, okay? It's not like it is. That's not like it was for our ancestors, or not like what it is right now in some third world countries. So, in other words, we don't have to worry about ever getting food. So we have an epidemic of obesity. United States, depending on what metric you look at, is definitely in the top 3 in the world in terms of obesity. So it's become harder and harder to lose fat. You eat out, you get fast food, you order in, boom. Even if your diet was really, really good, it takes one bad meal to fuck everything up and sends you back into the abyss. And it's a domino effect. So being shredded is not easy. All right. You can go downtown, or you can go on the corner or whatever where the bums hang out, and you see them, they're ripped. They're taking drugs, they're eating fast food, they're eating gas station food, but they're ripped. Okay. But they're dying inside. All right. So the way I look at it, Mobster, is why torture yourself when it comes to shredding? Why kill yourself on the inside and do what some of these people do? They take all these fucking nasty compounds, the DMP, the Clen, all this other garbage they put in their body, these stimulants, right? Like Zizzy, what he did, destroy your body on the inside just to look good on the outside. Okay. The way I look at it is do it the healthy way. Use fasting to your advantage. Use fasted cardio to advantage. Use cardio to your advantage. Eat healthy. Eat clean. Do it the right way. Do it the way the guys used to do it in the 70s, in the golden age of bodybuilding. All right. They knew about fasting. They know. Arnold knew. He did alternate day fasting. He would eat 3 healthy meals one day, the next day not eat anything ahead of a contest. He knew that shit worked. That got him trimmed up. He knew he wouldn't magically lose his muscle by doing that, because you don't lose muscle tissue when you do that. You will lose water. Okay. And since our muscle is made up of water, you can go flat in a competition. So what you do, even if you're flat going in competition, they knew they could get some jam or something and kind of plump up those muscles into the competition. So they knew the little tips and tricks. Okay. But you, as a normal Joe out there, you don't have to worry about looking good on a fucking competition in front of judges. You just want to look good year round. So it's very, very important to do it the clean way. And that's the way I look at it, Mobster. And that's why we use these anabolic steroids. They give us the tool to be able to put on good quality lean muscle mass and also cut body fat at the same time. It's called recomping, and it's very hard to do without using anabolic steroids. But with anabolic steroids, absolutely you can do it. Absolutely. Even if you have average genetics. So that's
Yes.
what I train people to do. That's what I want people to do and want people to accomplish. And it can be done. So that's what to me shredding is all about, Mobster. So touch on that really quick, and then let's get into Anavar.
I mean, I've got to agree with Steve, and this is the reason why both competitive athletes and your average Joes that want to get in shape do so. As I said earlier on, you're using anabolics to hold on to the muscle tissue, which will sometimes be lost simply by the simple fact that you're doing increased cardio, more activity, hitting it harder in the gym. Typically, for example, with a shred, Steve, you'll see way more sculpting and AKA muscle shaping type work, which was an increased volume, and an increased load is going to have a greater impact on your body. So you can only support that through diet. You can only support that through, for example, if I start doing more volume, Steve, and I'm not looking to get shredded, I'm going to need to eat more food. If I am looking to get shredded, I want the calorie deficit. But at the same time, I don't want to lose all that hard-earned muscle tissue. So I'm going to use products like Para Pharma's Primo and Para Pharma's Anavar to hold on to, and especially the Anavar in my case, Steve, the strength, and the Primo the muscle. Now, very quickly, and I'll just finish off on this particular part. We've talked about on other shows the Primobolan quote unquote from the golden age, where we said, why did bodybuilders of yesteryear? Well, firstly, they didn't have a lot of choice. Secondly, they were kind of in shape all the time. It didn't. It came afterwards where people would bulk up crazy and then cut down. They would get 40 pounds out of shape. One of the issues, and Steve's touched upon this just now, is that a lot of us, and I'm talking about the general population as a whole, are out of shape. Therefore, of course, they've got a lot more fat to lose. When you start to see, and we see this on the forums all the time, Steve. If I'm using Mastron and I'm 17% or 20%, motherfucker, you're too fat. You're too fat. Literally, we have to put you are one fifth, and we've seen worse. 1/5 of your body is fat. You weigh 200 pounds, that's 40 pounds of fat. That's fucked up. Think about that. So a lot of people, the average Joe population in general, is way more obese than they used to be, and that includes both sides of the pond, Steve, America and in the UK here. And so therefore you're going to have to work harder. And if you work harder, it's a temptation to use stronger drugs like Steve said. We don't want you to do DMP. Some of you will hate, for example, using Clen just because it makes you feel uncomfortable. There are good ways of using it, but some of you will absolutely hate it. I would much rather you use Para Pharma's Primo and VAR to hold on to your strength, to hold on to your muscle, and to keep that shape while you do the work at the dining table, while you do the work at the gym, and especially when you're out killing the steps or fasting, doing the cardio, whatever it is you need to do to get into shape. Let's talk about now, Steve, Primo and Anavar specifically. Now, I'll touch upon the Anavar. I'm a huge fan of Anavar. Now, for me, Anavar is twofold, and this one part applies to you if you're looking to shred, and one part applies to you hitting the gym. When you're in a deficit, when you're doing more cardio, I've already touched upon the simple fact that it's perfectly normal to lose a little bit of muscle tissue. And one of the things that top professional bodybuilders, and I'm thinking specifically of Dorian Yates, has said, he said it was typical for most competing athletes to ease their foot off the gas when it comes to training hard in the gym. And what they didn't realize is if you change what you were doing that kept the muscle on you and you kind of eased up, then obviously your body's not going to hold on to as much muscle tissue and or strength as possible. I love Anavar for strength, and I've touched upon this a bunch of times. It's also, and we use these kind of terms or phrases, all anabolic steroids have some kind of anabolic effect, but it differentiates between what is optimal. Anavar is optimal for what we call lean muscle gains. And again, especially if you're doing a shred, holding on to muscle tissue. When I've used Anavar, not only do I love it for strength, and I've touched upon this before, but also typically, and especially back in the day when I was still getting bigger and bigger and bigger, I would have typically about 5 pounds on an Anavar cycle. Now, I wasn't always looking to keep muscle on, but even then, Steve, if I was, I'd expect to keep 2 or 3 pounds. That doesn't sound like a lot, but a couple of cycles a year is 6 pounds, and this is just using Anavar. And you multiply that by the time I've been training, you get to be a big, strong motherfucker. Now, of course, what you're doing here today, listener, is shredding. So it's holding on to the tissue, not letting that go, and keeping your strength up, which means you can keep killing it in the gym with the heavyweights, which is precisely what got you to be big, muscular, if slightly out of shape motherfucker in the first place. So keeping that muscle tissue on is super important. Keeping the strength to keep that muscle tissue on is super important. That for me, and again, Steve, and we're going to talk about dosing afterwards, but I like to cycle this stuff at 50 milligrams a day. It's optimal for most people. And so we can mix and match when we're talking about cycles and dosing them in. What about Primo for you, Steve?
Well, first of all, we have to mention as well, Para Pharma, they have a couple options when it comes to Anavar, right? They've got a 10 milligram and a
Right,
50
Steve.
milligram.
Yes. Sorry, let me just say, I'm 100% listener. I'm telling Steve in the pre-show that I'll not mention it in the podcast. Make sure you go away and you look and you do the options that are available to you. So they do a 10 milligram pill, which is perfectly fine. And in fact, Steve mentioned this on the show the other day, especially for the ladies that we recommend Anavar for, which we for different situations, because it's a lot easier to split a 10 mil pill down to 5 or even 2.5 milligrams for the ladies. And for the guys that prefer to dose through the day, 10 milligrams are a great option. The other option they have is 50 milligrams, and I would split that, Steve, just straight down the middle, one in the morning or half in the morning and one in the afternoon for my 50 milligrams a day. Yeah, sorry about that. Back to the Primo for Steve.
Yeah, and when it comes to Primobolan, so Primobolan, like Anavar, they're very similar in that they're both DHT derivatives, but what they kind of differ is that Anavar, comes in oral form. Primobolan comes in injectable form. And Para Pharma has you covered when it comes to Primobolan. On the last podcast we did, we talked about Anavar and Masteron, and we talked about adding Primo to it. Para Pharma also they have a Para Pharma Primo 100, but they also have a Para Pharma Primo 200. So the nice thing about the 200 is it cuts down on the injection. So if you like, you could do 2 cc's, 3 cc's a week. You do 2 cc's of the 200, you're getting 400. You do 3 cc's, you're getting 600. So that makes it a lot easier. Now, back in the 70s, when Arnold used to use Primo, he used to get them in amps. They come in 100 milligrams. He'd crack open the amp, draw it, and then inject it. And he'd have to do that every single day because he had to get in a lot of Primo in his system, right? So he couldn't crack open 3 amps and draw the needle and draw the oil into the needle and go ahead and do 3-4 cc's at a time. That just wasn't plausible. So he would do a little bit every day. But now you have places like Para Pharma that are coming up with this great Primo 200 milligram a milliliter, so you can get a lot more volume and you can cut down your injections in half. And I really like that. So that's a great option for those of you who want to do that. But if you want to do the Arnold style, you can get in 100 milligram milliliter, but it comes in vials, not in amps. So again, it makes it easier. You don't have to worry about cracking open amps. I've lost so much gear over the years cracking open these damn amps and having little pieces of glass going into it, So I like the vials better. The only thing you have to worry about the vials is the rubber stoppers. If you really, you're rough on those rubber stoppers, those pieces of rubber can fall in your gear. But Para Pharma, they do a good quality vial with good quality rubber, so you don't have to worry about the rubber going into the gear. So Primobolan, it was one of the favorites of the guys back in the 70s. Golden age of bodybuilding, lean muscle mass, DHT derivative, as I said, doesn't aromatize into estrogen, doesn't give a lot of side effects, and it gives you good, clean, lean mass. Now, those of you who want to shred, it's very good for shaping your muscle, and it's very good. I like Primobolan better than Masteron because when you use Masteron with the Anavar, you're getting the hardening effects of the Masteron. But when you use Primo, you're getting less of a hardening effect, but more of a muscle building effect. So you're able to build the muscle and then harden a little bit. So you'll get, you'll have the appearance of getting more shredded, even with increasing weight or increasing the size of your muscles. So it's a really, really cool steroid, but it's a slow gainer. Like day to day, you're not going to notice changes on Primobolan. You see? But if you take pictures week 1, week 6, week 12, you'll say, wow, I could see the changes in the pictures. but you're not going to notice day to day. It's not like a trend situation where you go on trend and you notice like on a day-to-day basis your body is changing. So that's where I like Primo a lot. The side effects, that's where I like it, Mobster, because the side effects on Primo are very, very low. So shredding can be uncomfortable for a lot of people. Now, when you're using Primo and you're cutting back your calories, you're doing a lot of fasting, you're doing a lot of fasted cardio, the Primo will not interfere with that. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to use Tren and you want to do a lot of fasting and a lot of fasted cardio. The Tren will absolutely destroy your cardio because it's so fucking inflammatory. So you can't even breathe on Tren. This is why people who have like sleep apnea and who snore, ask the people they sleep with in the same bed on Tren. They will bitch about you snoring on Tren for a reason. It's because it shuts your nasal cavities down, so you're not going to be able to breathe while you sleep. So it fucks up your sleep, it fucks up your cardio, it fucks up a lot of things. Primo won't do that. Primo is designed not to be inflammatory like that. So you can use the Primo and it's not going to fuck with your cardio like other steroids will. And it's not going to fuck with your fasting or your calorie deficit like other steroids will. Because when you eat in a caloric deficit, carb deficit, fast on trend, because it's so nutrient, it's such a fierce nutrient partitioner that you'll start developing a lot of side effects. The shakes, the sweats, the energy issues, the nausea, you see? And you need to hydrate all the time. On Primo, you don't have to worry about getting in this many carbs. You don't have to worry about drinking all the time. So what I'm trying to say is Primo gives you the flexibility to be able to hit your cardio hard and hit your fasting hard and eat in a carb deficit, eat in a calorie deficit, whatever strategy you want to implement when it comes to shredding, it will allow you to do it. But is it as effective as other steroids? No, but it will make it flexible and much easier on you, and you can get really good results on it. So I like Primo for that particular reason. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking of a couple of things here, Steve. In fact, ironically, I'm thinking there's a yin and a yang thing going on here. We talk about this when we use the phrase synergy in some of our shows. Anavar, in terms of side effects, is an absolute pain in the ass, if not literally the ass, because of the pumps, and can fuck your cardio. Not because of the getting enough air in, Steve, but literally because of the pump itself. So it doesn't fuck you up on the cardiovascular. It fucks you up when you're doing cardiovascular with the pumps. Primo, on the other hand, as Steve said, doesn't have that kind of effect. Both of these are steroids, of course, and they have their same side effects in terms of the issues with impact on your liver and your organs and so on and so forth. That comes with the territory. And even though that they're both quite mild in that particular regard, Primo, and I'm just thinking specifically here, Steve, from the golden age of bodybuilding, the historical angle, was that you would see bodybuilders like Frank, Zane, and Arnold, etc., running up and down the sand of the beach. And we know for a fact that they were using Primobolan a big time in those days. They didn't have the access to the wide range of steroids that we got now. Tren really didn't come onto the scene until the late 80s and 90s. We know that, again, from the historical stuff. But Primo was widely available. In fact, we've talked about the fact that I've got some of the historical stuff that talks about the background of York Barbell, Gold's Gym, and so on and so forth. And one of the stories that came out of that time was that they were able to go see a doctor. They had doctors that were big fans of bodybuilding, and that's sometimes how steroids were sourced. One particular bodybuilder had an uncle that worked for a pharmaceutical company. I think Pete Gorinsky, the owner of Gold's Gym at one point. They got it tells a story about a whole suitcase or a huge great box of steroids arriving from his uncle. Well, one of the stories that came out at that time was that they had a friendly doctor that had an office or surgery or something just down the street from Gold's Gym. The guys would go there, be monitored by the doctor, who would ask them how they're getting on, how they feel, and he was the guy that they was able to source prescription steroids from back in the day. And as I say, at that time, Primo wasn't fucking the cardio the way that Steve says with the Tren. Like I say, neither of these steroids are side effect free. They both have their side effects, and they will both have an impact on the body. But again, we're going to talk about sensible dosing, stacking, and suggestions of what you can add to a stack in terms of the effects, rather than, as we said, throwing everything. And this, let me touch on this briefly. A couple of years ago, Steve, I think, in fact, just before the whole COVID crisis and whatever else, and even now, you still got these stories coming out of this bodybuilder, male or female, passing away in their 30s or their 40s and what was going on. One of the issues that came at that time, and this is why I think Primo and Anavar is a great stack, and especially the doses that you and I are going to talk about, is that people were allowing themselves to get out of shape, and then they weren't doing the work that they should have done to get shredded for the stage, male and female, and then they were having to take things up when it comes to PEDs to the oomph degree and do the absolute most fucked up shit that they could to get into shape. And there were certain gurus out there that were recommending these crazy stacks because the athlete they were working with was out of shape, and because they hadn't done the work at the cardio, at the dining table, or even sometimes in the fucking gym, and just throwing everything at these athletes for them to get in shape. And lo and behold, of course, it was causing terrible issues right up to and including people passing away because their bodies were super stressed, super toxic, and whatever else. Think about again, Anavar arguably, and I've seen back and forth on this, is for orals quite the mild anabolic, and especially, I mean, probably actually in terms of side effects, less of an impact, a negative impact on the body than even Dianabol, with, of course, the exception of those horrendous pumps, which are actually really uncomfortable. But you can take taurine to try and calm that shit down a little bit, hydrate as much as possible. And as I say, specifically with the historical angle, the simple fact of the matter is we know that there were healthier bodybuilders back in the day, and it's still incredibly useful now. Perhaps at different dosages, depending on who you listen to in terms of recommendations for athletes of now wanting to get into shape. So again, what we're talking about here today, listeners, is arguably, compared to some, and especially when Steve talks about trend, less harsh, but not completely side effect free, Steve. Now, what about dosing and how you'd put these two together? I've already touched upon for myself when it comes to the Anavar, and if again, especially if I was running it solo, as I quite often do when I'm doing strength cycles at 50 milligrams a day, I don't know that I'd adjust that number for myself. But then if I was going to be using Primo, I probably wouldn't run it crazy high either. And again, looking at the options that Para Pharma offers, I would probably look at the 200 milligrams a milliliter product, and I think I'd probably run that percent somewhere around a 300 to 400 milligrams a week in combination for me with the Anavar. And that's just as it comes on its own. What about you? And then obviously we can talk about what else we can throw in.
Yeah, 300 to 600, buddy. I mean, honestly, a lot of people, in a stack like this, I would go 5 to 600 because, you want to really, get this stuff in your system, and you want to get in your system pretty quickly. It's an inactivated ester. So getting it in your system to work with the Anavar is going to be very, very important. So it's really, to me, more important to when you time the Anavar with it. So if you're going to go 10 weeks, 12 weeks with the Primo, which to a lot of people is short, but look, I don't really believe in going more than 12 weeks. I believe in recovery. So for me, 12 weeks max. I don't care what steroid it is. I don't care what ester it is. 12 weeks max. And then you could do the Anavar the second half of the cycle, maybe the second 6, 7, 8 weeks of the cycle, maybe at 30, 40 milligrams a day. Some guys will go up to 60, So that would be the way I'd run these two together. And it would be a hell of a shredding stack. I do fasted cardio every day. I would be eating very, very clean, as clean as possible. Keep in mind, you eat junk, you're going to look like junk. So eat as clean as possible. Do some fasting here and there. Really get your glucagon levels up with that fasting. Get your insulin levels down so your body's not storing fat, so your body's burning fat. And then you should have some really good results with a good, clean shred doing it that way. In terms of stacking, I'll start to talk about some steroids to stack with. And, I can make arguments for a lot of different steroids, Mobster. One of them you could throw in here is testosterone. And Para Pharma has many types of testosterone options. They have a propionate, They have an enanthate, they have a cypionate, they got a lot of options when it comes to using testosterone. They have blends of testosterone, they got sustanon, which is a blend. So they have you covered no matter what type of testosterone you're looking for. They have you covered. They even have I'm seeing a test E 400 instead of a test E 250. So the 400 allows you to really just put a little bit. You could, if you were going to put add 100 milligrams a week of testosterone to this stack, you just put a quarter cc into that syringe with the Primo, just a quarter cc, and that'd be 100 milligrams. And that would give the cycle a little bit of kick. A lot of you out there like to use a little testosterone in your cycle as a base. Is it mandatory? No. All right. A lot of people want to argue that. Arnold back in the 70s and all these guys in the golden era, they never used testosterone. Okay. They had the bodies that we all strive for, right? They never used testosterone in those days. So is it necessary? No. You're not going to die from not putting testosterone. So if you want testosterone in it, you could do it that way. You could do 100 milligrams, maybe 200 milligrams. I wouldn't go any more. Remember, we're trying to shred. We don't want to add water retention in this cycle. We don't want to add too much testosterone where now we're going to have to add an AI. Okay. Now, Para Pharma, they do have AIs. They have Aromacin and Arimidex, and you can also get Letro just in case. But I don't want you to have to go down that route. I'm trying to save you money. I'm trying to save you a hassle of trying to have to balance your estrogen. And Anavar and Primo, since they're DHT derivatives, have some anti-estrogen properties already. Okay. So really, to me, I wouldn't run more than like 150 milligrams a week of testosterone with it if you wanted to go down that route. Now I'll do one more mobster, and then I'll let you jump in with your idea. But another one you could add in here is Tren. And earlier, we both kind of bashed Tren when it comes to, cutting or whatever. And justifiably so, because Tren can work against you when it comes to shredding, but it can also work for you. And I've seen with my own eyes the using Tren many times, but also with other people who use Tren. You can get on Tren, work out in the gym, not even do very much cardio, and still shred up on this stuff. I've seen it. And I've seen guys eat like crap on Tren and still shred up. It's not something I recommend at all. And it's really going to end up costing you big time in the long run, especially with your gut health. But some of you will react really well to Tren. So if you're one of those really good Tren reactors, you could go ahead and stack the Anavar, the Primo, and then add in some Tren, maybe 200 or 250 milligrams a week of Tren. You don't have to do much. And Para Pharma has a Tren E and they have a Tren Ace. And either one will work perfectly fine here. You might want to go with the Tren E since you're using Primo and Primos and enanthate ester. And you can mix in a little bit of that Tren in with your Primo in the same syringe and see if the magic happens. Now, if you do add in the Tren, keep in mind it's going to mess up your cardio. So if you are a cardio-centric person, you do like to do a lot of fasting, you like to cut your carbs way back, it's going to be a problem. Your side effects are going to be brutal. All right. But if you're a guy who is more of, I like to go to the gym, I like to lift weights, go home, maybe do 10 minutes of cardio before the workout or after the workout, you're one of those types of people and that works for you, then Tren could be an option. So it just depends on what you like to do. If you're an active person like I am, Tren can really fuck you up. I've been out on hikes before and I have to take those like glucose pills, that diabetics have to carry with them in case they overdose on their diabetes medication and their blood sugar gets too low. I had to carry those with me when I used to do long hikes with my dogs because I would be worried about having really bad hypo symptoms and being in a sweat and having like no energy to finish my hike and like something happening to my dogs. I'd be paranoid about that. But that's true. That will happen to you on Tren. So if you're an active person, Tren is not going to be a good idea. So I would not go the Tren route if you're an active person. I would probably go more the testosterone route. Okay.
Yeah.
So Mobster, what are your ideas? And I'll give a couple more after.
I'm just thinking of a couple of options here, Steve. I'll bring up one to give you the availability for the other one. Winstrol, they do a 50 as an injectable. They also do a 10 milligram and a 50 milligram pill oral version. The only issue again, and it's especially when you guys get lean, is you've got to watch out for the dry joints that sometimes people get, especially when you get crazy lean. And Steve's talked about how that feels. How would I dose it? I would keep the numbers that I've already talked about for Primo and Anavar. And I actually agree with something that Steve said earlier on as well for the length of cycle and that latter part of the cycle where Steve talked about a 12-week Primo and bringing in the Anavar towards the end is because I don't cut. I don't think of it in those particular terms, but I did like that idea, Steve. The same thing can be done by bringing in Winstrol at the same time as you did the Anavar. And in fact, I'd probably run this as the injectable version, Steve. And again, look for the availability. I'm going to say around 300 milligrams a week. I don't like to run any anabolics at high levels. There will be listeners out there that, I've got to go over a gram, Steve and Mobster. That's the way that we roll, especially when it comes to competition stacks and cycles. That's a bit different, and especially in this day and age. But I tend to go on the lower side with these numbers. I also like that sense of control, something that Steve talked about, and I will add this in now as well, is the flexibility. So I tend to plan in advance what I'm going to do. For the most part, I say pretty much that I stick to a plan. But we did a show not that long ago where Steve says, you don't have to do that. If something's not working, if it needs a little bit of tweaking, and if you want to get the great results that you're looking for at the end, or it's just not working and you need to go in another direction, it doesn't have to be cast in iron. It can be tweaked. So the idea, like we talked about here with the numbers that we said, there's always going to be flexibility in those numbers. You could listen to a million shows and people are going to argue the toss between 50 or 100, 150, 200. It's just my personal preference, and I know that Steve agrees with this. We tend to go for the lower numbers. Most of the stuff that Steve and I talk about, typically around 900, 1,000 milligrams of everything total per week. And I do like the analogy, Steve, when it comes to stacking, dosing, cycling, etc. Is the idea that you keep, if you can't get big or strong or cut on 1,000 milligrams a week, perhaps you need to change other things up. So, there's always, and again, it's fun to talk about this stuff with higher dosages because people like to express. It's the same if we were talking about cars and tweaking a car to get an extra few miles an hour out of it. But we're talking about your bodies here. It's one thing to have the discussion, but it's another thing to run this stuff. So again, for me, total stacking is with the Winstrol would probably be coming in around 350 milligrams at 50 milligrams a day, or a little bit less. Don't have to do that on the Anavar, 300 to 600 on the, and again, 300 in this example, Steve, of the Primo, and around 300 again. That's going to give you 950 total, and that keeps you just under the gram. But like Steve says, perhaps running the Winstrol and the Anavar towards the end of the cycle, the last 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks of a 12-week stack. What about another option for you, Steve?
Boldenone, which is equipoise. And Para Pharma has 2 options for you when it comes to that. They also have blends. They have different equipoise blends, which are really interesting. Go on their website and check out what they have. Just search for BOLDO, Boldo is what they call it. And they have a Boldo 300, which is 300 milligrams a milliliter. They have a Boldo 500, which is 500 milligrams a milliliter. So what did I talk about before? About trend, the way it destroys your cardio, and you're not able to take the dogs for a long walk, so you're not able to do a lot of cardio and fasting. Equipoise is much, much better. In fact, equipoise will actually help your cardio and boost your cardio. So equipoise is absolutely the perfect one if you like to do a lot of cardio. Now, it will increase your appetite a little bit. Not like some of the other steroids out there, but it will increase your appetite a little bit. So it may be a little difficult to eat in a deficit as much on it, but it really, really, really is really good for your cardio, and it raises your red blood cell count without causing pumps, without causing other issues. So if you like to do a lot of cardio, what you could do here is run the equipoise and the Primo together, and you could drop the Anavar, because the Anavar, as Mobster mentioned earlier, causes pumps, and it causes crippling pumps, especially back pumps. I know I had that when I did cardio, when I go running or whatever. So you could go that route, or you could do the Anavar really, really low dose, maybe 10, 20 milligrams a day instead of going 50, 60 milligrams a day, you see. And then you can run the equipoise, anywhere from 300 to 500 milligrams a week. And you can mix it with the Primo and run the Primo anywhere from 300 to 500 milligrams a week, you see. So that's a good way to shred. And you could cut back on your food, do some fasting on it. It's not going to mess with your fasting too much, even though it's going to increase your appetite, but it's not going to like kill your situation like Tren will. I mean, if you fast on Tren, you could literally cause problems, It's that much of an issue when it comes to, the way it like messes around with your blood sugar and stuff. I would say, on equipoise, it's worth a shot. If you like to stay active and you have a very cardio active lifestyle, it would be a really, really good option in that situation, Mobster. So you can give that one a go. A lot of people don't know that equipoise is so good when it comes to cutting. And I'll give one more, Mobster. Toronto Bowl. And again, I'm going to echo what I just said about the cardio. You could switch out the Anavar for Toronto Bowl and run the Toronto Bowl with the Primo. And T-Bowl, the good thing about T-Bowl, it doesn't cause pumps, the crippling pumps that the Anavar will or the Winstrol will, as Mobster talked about. T-Bowl, I like T-Bowl. The only thing I don't like about T-Bowl is that it's an oral. And it comes in 20 milligram tablets. I don't like taking orals every day and having to remember to take orals every day. I like to just inject once or twice a week and be done with it. It takes like 2 minutes. Boom, I'm done. I don't have to worry about it. But then orals, I have to keep the oral on my desk and remember to take it and all this stuff. And I can't remember, did I take it this morning? I can't remember. T-Bowl comes in 20 milligram from Para Pharma. I would do 2 of those a day, 40 milligrams. You could run it with the Primo. That would be a really, really good one for your cardio. It would be good for your cardio, and it'd be good for cutting, and it won't mess with your appetite. So you could do Primo and T-Bowl. Neither one will mess with your appetite, and that would be a really, really good stack. So I have a lot of respect for that stack as well, Mobster.
Let me throw in a few tips and techniques, guys, and I mentioned this on another show recently. Do the cardio you're going to stick with. Now, that might mean daily steps, done at a reasonably fast pace. The trick is always to be slightly out of breath, even with your daily steps. If Steve's talked about fasted cardio, and again, guys, I see this as an excuse. You want to get in a shape, you want to beat your buddies, you want to be the one that's ripped, shredded on the beach. The trick is to get up half an hour earlier and do your shit first thing in the day. Get it done, guys. Like I said, when it comes to cardio, there's a bunch of stuff that you can do. It doesn't just have to be running. It doesn't just have to be riding the bike or whatever else. It could be rowing, it could be using the treadmill, it could be the stair climb or whatever else. But the one that fucks you up and the one you can stick to. Heck, guys, you don't even have to do the same cardio. You can rotate through those different cardio options, just so long as you've got a good, accurate measure of what you're doing. Steve touched upon something earlier on, and I think this is kind of a trick that's sometimes missed on similar shows to ours. I don't always hear this. Photographs. It is a head fuck for us, and especially we're on a diet that we can't always necessarily see ourselves as other people see us. One of the tricks I've talked about is literally going to see someone at the beginning of the shred and then going to see them again at the end of the shred. That person who hasn't seen you for 12 weeks will see the fucking difference. It might be your nan, it might be your mum, it might be whoever, but that person will see it. You won't always notice the changes, and you kind of got used to that face in the mirror, used to seeing those abs and those legs and those quads and those biceps. The other person hasn't seen you for 12 weeks. The photograph is a great one, and we encourage this when we talk about the logs online. It keeps you on plan, because it's very easy to slide backwards and become distracted. We get guys asking about shredding that want to go to a pool party and drink a beer. No, you can't, motherfucker. This is a shred, looking to get into shape. The photograph keeps you there too. You take photographs, as Steve said, for example, I would say every couple of weeks on a 12-week, which is 6 set photographs. And I want you to do the full set. That's front, back, relax, posing, whatever. Try to take those photographs under the same conditions, in the same spot, with the same lighting, same clothing even. One of the tricks that companies used to do was have the person with shorts down and then hitch the shorts up, stomach pushed out, stomach stuck in, and so on. You want the same conditions, the same kind of photograph, the same kind of lighting, the same doorway or wall or whatever it is that you're using, the same skin color, although you might pick up a little bit of color as the sun starts to come out and the spring and the summer starts to come along. Something else that's super important here, and I think Steve will agree with me, focus on the end game. When you're tired, when life gets in the way, when work's stressing you out, when bills are coming through the door, whatever, there's a million distractions, but we're looking for the end game. And the end game is looking fucking amazing. That might be, and I've touched on this already, looking amazing on the beach. The percentage of people in this day and age, and especially when it comes to doing a shred and getting super cut, is tiny. It's fractional. It's like 1 in 100. You go to the beach and you will be the only person out of 100 people that are there with anything like a six-pack. The only person there with separation in your delts. The only person there who can head of the triceps popping out. The only person you can see separation of any kind in the legs. And to get crazy competition shredded is on another level again. That's where people are pointing at you in the street as you're walking around in a t-shirt and shorts. That stuff is fucked up level crazy. You've got the options of both of these things. Now, food. It needs to be clean. It needs to be healthy. Now, there's for and against on this argument. I'm going to give you both when it comes to meal prepping. So one of the things that sometimes drives people absolutely crazy is a sensation of being hungry. And again, I would argue that you should focus on the end game. You need to be kind of hungry. You're not starving to death here. You're just eating healthy. You're eating clean. So normally, the science says there's no great advantage between the difference between 2 meals and 5 meals per day. All I'm going to say here is that perhaps, and especially it's more of that head fuck for some people, the 5 meals, still the same amount of calories, still macros the same overall for the day. It's just going to give you that sensation of having something in the stomach. And that might mean a few of you can cope better. But the truth of the matter is, and I think Steve will agree with this when we talk about faster cardio or doing faster, whatever else, is you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Cardio isn't comfortable. It shouldn't be comfortable when you're trying to burn fat. Doing what we do in the gym might be pleasurable because you're killing it, but at the same time, it's hard. And the diet can feel like that too. What do you think on that kind of topic, Steve? Have you got any particular tips that you get people to get them through the grind?
So, I mean, look, any human being, okay, throughout history has been uncomfortable, whether it be the feeling of being hot, feeling of being cold. We talk, a lot of people talk about taking cold showers, take a cold shower every day, be a little uncomfortable, and it makes your body stronger. Like, do you really think like any pro athlete, they're able to excel and get to where they are without pushing themselves? If you're training for a 5K, you've got to be uncomfortable during your training. You got to push your body to the point where you feel like you're going to throw up, but you got to keep pushing. You're training in a group, you're looking at that person in front of you. I can remember when I used to train for triathlons, I'd look at the dude in front of me who I could never beat. And I would freaking be 2 seconds away from throwing up. And I'm like, I got to keep this guy in my sight. I cannot let this guy get ahead of me. I kept pushing. That was the day where I came so close to throwing up, where I almost caught that guy. That was the day. That was the changing point where I actually broke a plateau. Because the next time we did a race, I actually improved my time and I was able to actually pass that person. And when we used to train together going forward, I used to always beat them. So, but this is a person, I could never beat them for 6 straight months. I would train my balls out. I could never beat them. But one day I got to the point where I was so fucking uncomfortable that I finally could beat them. When you're lifting weights, you feel that burn. You push to fatigue. You got to feel that burn. I trained with someone before. They were doing the ab cruncher thing. They're like, oh, and then they just stopped halfway through their set. I'm like, why'd you stop? Like, I felt burning sensation. And I'm like, so why did you stop? The burning sensation is the lactic acid.
Man. Yeah.
Push through it. You got to push through it. You're training your body. When Mobster lifts heavy ass weight, it's uncomfortable.
Oh man, yeah.
But he pushes through it. His heart rate's going through the roof, but he pushes through it to get the body. It's about training your body. So when it comes to being uncomfortable, it's okay. A lot of you grew up, every time you'd whine and complain, your parents used to like stick ice cream in your mouth to shut you up. So now as an adult, you think, well, every time I'm uncomfortable, I'm just going to go to my fridge, open it up and eat something, eat some treat, give myself a treat, give myself some ice cream because I have to give myself a treat. Our dogs, they're jumping around playing, and we kind of want to let them, just leave me alone for a minute. So here's a rawhide. Go chew on this for a while. Give me a break. We do the same thing with our kids, and then the kids grow up as adults, and they use those tools that were ingrained in them. Where I'm uncomfortable with something, so I'm just going to throw food at my body. And that's what we do. That's why we have a obesity one of the reasons we have an obesity epidemic. But, when it comes to
let me talk about
when
Steve.
it comes
I
to,
don't.
yeah, let me finish my thought, Mobster. Wait,
sorry, man. Yeah,
yeah.
go on.
When it comes to
Go on.
cutting, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Okay. It's going to be uncomfortable. You just got to push through it. Your ghrelin levels go up and down throughout the day. You feel like I'm hungry. I got to eat something. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I got to eat something. I'm trying to fast for half the day, but I got to eat something. Wait 15 minutes or have some water. I guarantee you 15, 20 minutes after that, you won't be hungry anymore. Because your ghrelin levels are fucking with your brain, telling you to go find food, go find food, go find food. It's like a cat. The cat's always looking for something that's moving, a bug or a rodent or anything, to go grab it. Because in its mind, it's thinking, I gotta grab something. And that's kind of, you've got to overcome that if you're going to be successful when it comes to cutting. I don't care if you're 18% trying to get to 13%, or if you're 13% trying to get 8%, if you're 8% trying to get 6%. It doesn't matter. You're going to be uncomfortable, and you have to be able to fight through it, or you're not going to accomplish jack shit when it comes to fitness. I don't care what it is. So go ahead, Momster, finish your final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm just going to touch upon. Listen, guys, when I did that, when I only did a 4-week cut, as I said right at the beginning of the show, and there was a few times, and the trend was partly responsible for this as well, of course. I'm out there doing my third set of steps for the day, Steve, and I'm dragged. I don't want to go out and do a third set. I've done 2 already, Steve, and I feel kind of tired. But I went out and did my third set. I just got out there and did my third bunch of steps. And I know I've got this fucking mile, man. I got to walk down, I got to walk back. That's a couple of thousand, blah, blah, blah. Got my shit done. I think I might have missed one, Steve. The rest of them was doing 6,000, normally did 9,000 at 300 plus pounds. Get that shit done, tiring, right? Why? Because I'm telling the guys on the forum that I'm doing a cut. I want that cut to be successful. Was I hungry? Yes. Was I tired? Yes. Was it hard to get through? Did I like how I felt on trend? No. But the reality of this situation is you want to be that one person. And I said this at the beginning. You want to be the one on the beach. You want to be the one down the park. You want to be that person that did the grind. Okay. You go to any gym, including the hardcore gym that I go to, got my gym here, but the hardcore gym that I go to as well, Steve. And people there, I would say 60, 70% are exactly like Steve said. Stop him when shit gets uncomfortable. Stop him when shit gets heavy. They don't want to be crazy strong. They don't want to be crazy ripped. They just want to be a little bit in shape. That's not what this podcast is around. We're talking about shredding. Shredding is crazy. When a freak comes in, someone that's going to do a competition, when they've got that kind of look, we don't get 100 in our gym. So certainly not when I go, Steve. But that motherfucker stands out. Whether it's a male or a female, we've had women competing men. They stand out. You listener who's listening to this podcast, who wants to get shredded, supported by Para Pharma products, wants to be that person. That when the top comes off, oh my God, I'm seeing obliques, I'm seeing hamstrings, I'm seeing Christmas tree, I'm seeing separation on the delts. The fuck is this person in condition? Our gym owner has been in that kind of condition with the lines going into the delts and the veins up and down, just sitting behind the gym counter with the there's little tiny lines, Steve, at the base of the delt where they're tying into the tricep. That is shredded, competing shredded, working with athletes that want to get tan and do modeling gigs shredded. That's the stuff. It's hard. It's not easy. But with Para Pharma products, like we've talked about today, with the pre-breakfast, if you're even having breakfast, the fasted cardio, going out when it's raining, covered up in your hoodie, covered up in your waterproof, still getting your cardio done in, doing your steps, hitting the treadmill, coming to the gym at 6:30 in the morning before work and getting your shit done before you go off. If you're even a competing athlete, before you coach and get other athletes into shape. And especially when it comes to the competitive athletes, knowing that all your competition is doing stuff like you're doing. This isn't just gym users now. This is every single person that's going to be on that stage review is doing cardio. Every single person's dieting. You just need to be there more in that game, with your eye on the end game, with your eye on the first place prize, with your eye, even as an average Joe, on being in crazy, ripped and shredded shape. Please note, we are not doctors and opinions are ours. Our view and based on our experience and views on the topic, a podcast for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.